Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Knight. I'm the National Program Manager for the National Engineers Week Future City Competition. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to our Model Presentation Judging webinar. We're very excited that you've signed up for this webinar, and we hope that you find it informative. Your microphones will be muted throughout the presentation, but if you do have questions, just type them into the question line, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the presentation. If we can't get to all the questions, we'll be happy to get back to you online to answer any questions you have about judging the model and presentation for the 2013 National Engineers Week Future City Competition. I'd like to take this time to introduce our presenters for this afternoon. Our first presenter will be Dr. Michael Smith. Dr. Mike, as we call him, is the Deputy Executive Director of Internal Operations for the National Consortium for Graduate Degrees for Minorities in Engineering and Science, also known as GEM. Dr. Mike also serves as the Chair of the Diversity Council for the National Engineers Week Foundation. Our other presenter this afternoon is Mr. Charles Griffith, PE. Charlie works with WBCM and also is a Future City Regional Coordinator, recently from Phoenix, Arizona, but has now moved to the Mid-Atlantic region where he'll be taking part and working with that committee. Our topics this afternoon will begin with Dr. Mike's look at diversity sensitivity, both culturally and gender. And then we'll move on to Charlie with judging the 3D model and judging the presentation. So let's go ahead and begin, shall we? And Dr. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Bill, thank you so much, and I want to welcome everyone to this training seminar for the Future Cities Judges. I'm excited to be here with you all today, and hopefully we'll share some information that isn't necessarily new to many of you, but for those of you who may be first-time judges, including those that are even seasoned judges, hopefully there's some information that will be helpful to you in managing the groups of students that you're going to be interacting with during your competition judging. Bill asked, and the Engineers Council staff asked that, Engineers Week Council staff asked that we provide some insight to you all with regard to diversity sensitivity around culture and gender with regard to the students that you all are going to be judging. And the information that I'm going to be sharing today is information that will help you in your interactions and in your understanding of how to potentially deal with diverse types of student teams that you may be having to judge. When we talk about diversity sensitivity with regard to culture and gender, many of you may know, some of you may be educators, some of you may have children who are in school, who are in middle school age groups, who understand that students have very broad thought processes and are very creative. And now with technology providing access for our students to a plethora of information, it allows them even more access to the limits of their creativity. And so when you talk about culture and gender differences, especially if you all will be dealing with teams that have a diverse group of student members culturally, as well as mixed teams with male and female students, it's important to recognize that the diversity that comes from culture and gender differences really does support creativity of thought. And so when the students are putting together their future city models, a lot of that creativity will be shown through that judging process. And so it's important to recognize that cultural and gender differences within this judging process is very important. And in fact, you will begin to notice that those teams that do have some diversity among the team members will show great creativity in the processes that they'll be sharing as part of the judging process. One of the things that we encourage judges and educators to do when they're interacting with diverse communities is to not fall victim to what we call implicit biases. And implicit biases are biases that most every human being on the planet have, just based on our upbringing, based on the environments that we live in, that we don't often think about, that many times subconsciously come to the forefront in our interaction with those of another gender or those of another culture. And what we've had listed on the slide here are some examples of different types of implicit bias. And let me be clear, implicit bias doesn't necessarily correlate to racism or anything like that. It's just general human knowledge biases that we tend to have that we don't even often think about when it comes to those of another gender, those of another culture. So for example, many of us have heard many times and know not to be true that, for example, that girls are not good at math. And these are messages that often may come from educators themselves, may come from parents, may come from the peers of students, just based on, again, culture, environment, socioeconomic factors and things like that that you will encounter and that students encounter. And so these are the types of things that we've heard that we often want to help suppress because we know that they're not true. Things, again, one other example includes boys are better at leading teams. We know several CEOs and heads of companies within corporate America that are in fact female who lead quite well. Many of you within your own circles lead well and see females that we see as the diversity council members that we want to help combat. When we talk about cultural sensitivities, there are several examples that many of you all can probably come up with that you've heard. One example is that all Native Americans live on reservations. Now, I know this sounds very simplistic, and some may say, how does this relate, to judging? Some of you all that are judges that may be judging at competitions that are in states or in areas or in regions where there's a higher population of Native Americans, those who have never visited those areas of the country do have a skewed view of, for example, how Native Americans live and don't recognize that they all don't live on a reservation. Same thing we've heard as well as with regard to African American boys are only good at sports, for example. Again, these are just a few examples of some of the implicit biases that we may think but not say and that may come across in our interactions with students. And so as you all judge and you interact with the students, you want to be mindful that the cultural differences and the gender differences and even the socioeconomic differences that some of the student team members are going to bring to the table during the judging process. One has to be in control of your thought, and the focus should really be on the STEM knowledge that the students have and what they're learning through this process with Future Cities. It's very important that as judges that you exploit the positive uniqueness that the differences of the teams create when you're interacting and when you're judging these teams. Of course, there are going to be several teams that very well may be all African American or all Caucasian, and that's okay as well. Again, the focus of your judging is primarily to focus on the STEM knowledge and the creativity and the thought that these students have put behind development of their reports and of their Future City models. Next slide, please. Next slide. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I've got it, Dr. Mike. Also, if you could speak up just a little.
Gotcha. Okay. Can you all, hopefully everyone can hear me. With regard to your role as a judge in the Future City competition, you want to create a culture of inclusiveness and inclusion among the students that you're going to be judging with. Again, as a judge, depending on the type of area or region that you're in, some of the students that you may encounter may come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, may come from different cultures. You may have teams that are made up of all females or all girls. And so you have to come in with an attitude that this is all about inclusion and everybody has played an important role in the project of coming up with their Future City design. So it's very important that you, again, create a culture of inclusion. And what that means is that you respect the diverse views of the student. These students are going to come in with a variety of background and environments that they have come from, and it's important to recognize that these students are products of their environment, but they're not necessarily defined by their environment. And so you don't want to apply a one-size-fits-all approach to your judging. As you go through this type of judging, often you may encounter a diverse team of students who presented very well, whose model looks very well, then you come to the next team and it's not as good, then you come to the third team and they're much better, and you find yourself doing a comparison between each of the teams that you've judged thus far. When you talk about inclusiveness and not having a one-size-fits-all approach, you want to focus on the merits of the team that you're judging. And again, you want to focus on what is the knowledge base that they bring, what is the creativity that they bring to this judging process. It's not all about the fact that because I just judged one team and this is how it works for them, it's going to necessarily work and be presented in the same way from a different team. So it's very important to recognize those differences. And you want to meet the students where they are, recognizing that there are also going to be some potential age differences with the teams that you're going to be judging as well. Even though most of these teams again are middle school teams, you may have a broad age range, probably 3 to 4 years possible age range between the students that you're going to be judging, and each student's experience is going to be different. So you have to understand that these are middle school students, and their vocabulary is going to be a little bit simpler in some cases, and the way they speak and present may not be as seasoned and as polished as older teams of competitions that you've judged before. So it's important that you meet the students where they are, recognize that they are students, recognize that some of the responses and the engagement that you're going to get is going to be at a middle school level, that there may be students whose attention spans may not be as broad as other students on the team. So you just want to make sure that you involve all members of the team, even those students that may be introverted, even those students who may be the quietest, because quite often the quiet students are the ones that are the most creative and have really added value to the team. They just haven't mastered public speaking skills yet. So you want to meet students where they are as far as language, as far as interaction, and as far as recognizing the age group that you're truly dealing with. That's going to be very important in this role. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Yes, I'll be right there.
Okay.
For some reason, it's being a little slow today.
No problem. All righty. So as you begin your judging process once you get on site, you want to be prepared to manage through cultural and gender differences, again, amongst teams and between teams. And, recognize that, again, we have a student population that has a lot more access to technology, and in some cases they're much better at technology than they are at English. Some of you may be in areas where you're going to be dealing with students, with bilingual students who speak Spanish, for example, again, with English. And so you have to, again, be mindful that, these students are products of their environment, but they're clearly masterful students who are very engaged in STEM, and we want to keep them excited about that. So in doing so, we don't want to we don't want to be swayed by the use of culturally driven slang. These students have a different vernacular than we had as youth. They're driven by technology. They're driven by their environment, and so many of them may come to this competition and may not have necessarily been trained on public speaking, on the type of conversations and language that you use with your peers at school on the playground. Is not the type of language that you may want to use as part of this process. And it's not that you should necessarily expect students to come in using foul language and things like that, but some of the students who are involved in the program, again, are products of their environment, and so they tend to bring that with them even to competitions like Future Cities. But you want to just be mindful and sensitive to those things and keep them focused on what they're there to do. It's all about what's in their brains and not how they're dressed or how they look. Again, we are focused on gender and cultural differences, and many times when you talk about culture and gender differences, you also find the conversation finds its way to socioeconomic status as well. And so, some of the students may come from a background where they are on subsidized lunches and things like that in school, and so the way that they interact with other students may be different. Again, the focus is about their creativity, what they know, and the value that they bring to their team relative to the projects that they've designed and that they've built. And so what you see is not always what you get. So just be mindful that when you're judging, don't be swayed by what you see, don't be swayed by the language. It's really all about what the students are able to do. You also want to be culturally sensitive in your questioning of the students. As you ask questions, you want to make sure that you engage all students on the team, and you also want to think through, especially those of you who may be judging populations that are highly cultural. So for example, if you're at a competition that has a lot of African American teams or Hispanic teams, if you are dealing with a team that is all girls, you want to be sensitive in your questioning so that some of those implicit biases that we talked about earlier don't necessarily come out. You want to make them feel comfortable about the projects that they've done, even if they don't present well, and even if, frankly, their designs are not as good as some of the other teams that you've seen. Part of this process beyond the competition is really keeping these students excited and engaged and knowing that, again, engineering and science is about continual processes, continual improvement. What would you do differently next time? So you want to be thoughtful of that when you're going through this process. And then finally, you want to remember that STEM, again, is the focus of the Future Cities competition, and that we work to bring out the best in each of the students as you judge them. Make sure that, I forget ultimately the size of each team. I believe it's probably 4 to 5 students on each team. But, when time permits, make sure that you engage each student in a way that allows them to feel a part of this process and make them feel a part of the competition, especially as they go through the competition. They move up in the ranks and they get to a point where they may engage in the competition at the national level, where there may be only 1 or 2 teams that are all girls, or there may only be a few teams that are made up of students that are not of the majority. And so you want to make them comfortable throughout the process so that they're giving their best during the process, so they stay engaged and they're not focused on the things that others tend to focus on that really diminish what the Future City competition is about. So I know I did that very quickly, but I wanted to stick to the time that I was given, and I will definitely take questions or any thoughts at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Now let's move on to Charlie and his presentation.
Thank you, Bill.
And I'll have your slide there in just a moment.
Okay. In the meantime, I'll get going. The first thing I would say applies to all aspects of judging. Download the rubric. Once you have that rubric downloaded, have it in front of you while you're judging. If you already have the manual, all the rubrics are located within the manual. So up first, when the slide gets here, the 3D model. It accounts for 120 points of the judging process. I'll give it a second, Bill. So obviously the aesthetics of the 3D model play a role in the judging. There's 2 categories, quality of workmanship and appearance. So that's 20 out of the 120 points. But get beyond that. Look at the planning and the infrastructure that went into the city. The question might be brought up, if the physical model looks too good for a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader, make a note and just let Bill know if you have a concern. So does this team models display an understanding of engineering? Something that's easy to get caught up with is that first aesthetic look at it. But go beyond that. See if it has the engineering aspects that actually make a city. The competition's mission is to engage students in engineering, so like Dr. Mike said, provide that positive feedback to students. Go on and look at what's unique within that city for engineering. Did the students use the recycled materials? We're looking for solutions that we even as engineers haven't come up with. So if there's something outside the box, that's great. Does it obey the laws of physics? That's the questions that we as judges would be asking ourselves. So on to the presentation. Once again, I'm going to reiterate this point one more time. Download that rubric. Having the rubrics in front of you makes your job a lot easier as a judge. Kids are going to get nervous. They might stutter, they might freeze. There's a difference between stuttering and freezing than if they have a script memorized and lose track of where they're at in their script. Ask those tough questions that engage the students and make them think on their feet. But ask them tough questions nicely. I think Dr. Mike kind of pointed that out. we're using this as a platform to engage these kids into STEM. I want all the students to walk away feeling challenged but excited and wanting to be engineers. Once again, don't focus on the clothes they're wearing. A team might come out looking sharp in matching suits. Like Dr. Mike said, culturally there's those differences. Listen to the engineering solutions and engineering principles they present and address. Once again, the competition, the teams are supposed to adhere to a $100 limit. So don't let anything outside of that influence the scoring. The STEM-based competition, you'll see a variety of skits, acts, and maybe even a song or two. Sort through those and see who really has the best understanding of the engineering principles. You might encounter a group within the presentation where one student does all the talking. It's okay to direct questions at a particular student if you feel like that student hasn't participated and might not understand what they've actually presented. Remember, this is a team competition. Ultimately, it's which kids know the most about engineering our city of the future. Next slide, Bill. Like I mentioned, the program handbook has all the rubrics in them. If not, you can pull them up from the Future City website. I would recommend definitely taking a look at that website and looking over those before you get to competition day. Another great resource is if you have any colleagues or friends that have judged before. They'll have been through it and understand, so it's great to ask them questions and they can give you feedback. I'm sure, such as myself, who's judged before, it's a great experience, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy yourselves this year. So hopefully pass that buck along so that way we have more and more judges for the next year. And kind of the last tip I'm going to give from a judging perspective, ultimately we just need you guys to be consistent. If you grade harder, as long as it's consistent, it all averages out. We grade things multiple times for the competition. So ultimately, be consistent, be fair, and last but not least, most importantly, get the kids engaged and excited about becoming an engineer. And then that's all I have for you guys. I think Bill will open it up to questions. I put my contact information down. If anybody does have a question, they can email or call me anytime.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate it. And Dr. Mike, I appreciate it also. We'll open it up now to questions. If you have any questions, you can type them in the question box, and I will be more than happy to pass them on and ask the question and get the answer from the experts.
And Bill, I'll jump in and say, when you do the presentation for placement after the event, feel free to add a slide with my contact information on the back end as well. I'm more than happy to answer questions afterwards as well.
Oh, great. Thank you, Dr. Mike. We do have one comment that was made by one of our attendees that Yahoo, IBM, DuPont, Xerox, MIT, Princeton, HP are all currently led by technical women.
Exactly. And so those are things we want to be mindful of. That's important. Great comment.
So thank you for our viewer who asked that. Do we have any other questions?
Bill, this is Thea. We have a question. Someone wants to know what the STEM acronym stands for.
Great question. Who wants to field that? Okay, I will. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math.
We had another comment from someone asking if we were suggesting that we lower our standards based on age and diversity. And Dr. Mike, I was wondering if you could address that question or comment.
That's a great question as well. And the answer is no. There's a quality standard in the rubric that is being provided to you for the competition, and in no way should you sway from that rubric. What we're talking about is really about sensitivity and engagement. So the rubrics that are set forth in how you judge a model or a design or report should be followed throughout the competition. And as Charlie said, you want to make sure that you're consistent in your judging. We're just saying that when you begin to interact with groups that are diverse, that are different, and you through your implicit vision and the implicit biases that we all have, again, you encounter things that just upon initial interaction with that group make you think, something's going to be different. You have to manage through that sensitivity. So what we're saying is that, for example, if you're judging a group that is all girls, right, to me that's an exciting opportunity. But when you question them, some of your questions that may deal with, and when you look at the aesthetics of their design, you may find things that lend to the fact that they are girls. For example, I've been a judge before for several of the competitions, and you may tend to see teams that are made up of all girls where they use, for example, a lot of stickies on their model. Well, well, they're called stickies, I guess. Stickies on their models, or you see things like the color pink used a lot, and so just by nature you go, oh, these are girls, pink, it makes sense, and you begin to be swayed by the visual when it's not just about the visual. And the reality is, girls tend to use more stickies than guys do. Girls tend to like pink more than gentlemen do. That's just a fact, but it shouldn't sway you in your judging of the competition. So it's not about lowering or changing your standard. It's about being sensitive to the groups that you may interact with that come from different cultural or gender backgrounds, whose perspective on design and how they speak and other things may be different, but the knowledge base is still the same.
We got another question asking, judges don't have to present in school this year. Judges score the project online. Bill, can you talk about the various types of judges? Because I think we have a mixed group here.
Sure, I'd be happy to. We actually have 3 different types of judging that is done. 2 are virtual judging, and 1 is in-face judging. Virtually judging, we do the Virtual City, the SimCity 4 software that the students design their virtual city with is judged virtually. We also judge the essay, the research essay, which this year deals with rainwater runoff, as well as the city narrative, which I like to call their Convention Visitor Bureau piece. Why would people come and live in your city? That's also judged virtually. Then on both the regional and the national level, we have our in-face competitions, which is what we've been discussing on this webinar, where they have the students present or do a presentation of their city and why do you want to live there and the essay topic, and then there is a period of Q&A where you, the judges, will be asking the students questions that are germane to their city and to the essay.
Great. We have another question. Is there a need for more judges at this time?
Yes, yes, and yes. If you have colleagues that can judge either on the regional level or the national level, if you visit futurecity.org and click on register, there's an opportunity to register either for the regional level to judge or at the national level to judge. And although we do have a few competitions that are going to be happening this coming Saturday, most of our competitions are on Saturday the 19th and Saturday the 26th for the regional level, and then we can certainly use judges for the national competition for both the essay and the virtual city. So if you're not in the metropolitan Washington area, but you'd like to see what the regional winners from across the country, and you're interested in those, the virtual city or the essay, you can certainly sign up for judges like for that because all that is done online. If you are in the metropolitan Washington area and you're available on Monday the 18th of February from 8 a.m. till about 2 p.m., you'll be at the Crystal City Hyatt Regency and can certainly use judges for those presentations.
Great. Another question, do parents normally get involved in the judging process?
The parents are allowed to be in the judging room, but they typically don't get involved in the judging itself. And Charlie, you may want to speak to this too, where we see is the parents involved in supporting the team and working with the educator and the mentor to really make sure that the STEM learning is highlighted.
Absolutely. I think if a parent was on a national judging and his child was in the competition, he'd probably have to excuse himself from judging that portion. I would venture to guess, Bill, you can correct me on that, but certainly on a regional level, I think most coordinators do it that way as well. But a lot of the parents are involved and hands-on, and we highly encourage it.
Here's another question. Will a copy of the rubric be available to the judges at the competition, or do we need to download and print them and bring our own?
They will be supplied for you. We will have copies of the rubric, and the regions do that also. There's also on the website under resources beyond the rubric, if you scroll down under resources to judging, there's a judge's manual that not only has the rubrics but the score sheets, so you can familiarize yourself with the score sheets. So great question, but we appreciate your volunteering. We don't try to make you work too hard.
Another question, is there a theme for this year's competition?
I'm sorry, Thea, what was that?
Is there a theme for this year's competition?
Well, I'll let you answer that.
Every year, yes, there is. There is a theme. This year's theme is stormwater management. And we are asking kids to design and manage a system to manage stormwater in their cities. And we like this theme this year because it really touches on all aspects of the competition, from their SimCity to their models, obviously to their essay because that's the essay question, but we expect that stormwater be present in all aspects of the competition. You can go to futurecity.org and look there for more information about the theme. And then we have another great question. How much time should one spend on each entry to ensure quality judging?
Charlie, I'll let you field that if you don't mind.
No problem. Within the narrative, you're probably looking at about 10 to 12 minutes for a narrative, an essay about 15 to 20 minutes. The model itself, probably anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. Probably spend looking over each model.
Great. Another question. For mainly in the region, do we judge each region random cities or all cities? And in the regions, you will just be judging those teams that compete at the regional competition. The essay, narrative, and virtual city would have been prejudged prior to competition days, and then those scores are added in together on that. Typically, and it varies from region to region, some of our regions are quite large, having hundreds and hundreds of schools participating, where others have not quite so many. So you probably will judge anywhere, if you're doing the essay, from 6 to 10 essays in virtual cities, and probably that many at competition also.
We have another question. Are there pictures of models that have won in the past so we can see what the standard has been?
Yes, absolutely there are. Again, if you'll visit our website at www.futurecity.org and click on Showcase. If you click then and filter by national and then by model, there are pictures of all the models from last year's national competition there for you to view.
We also, someone also asked, the handbook has a number of rubrics. Which ones should we review for this coming Saturday? This person specifically Milwaukee, but could you clarify which rubrics they should be looking at?
Sure, absolutely. You should be looking at the presentation rubric as well as the model rubric.
We have another question. Does each team have its own unique essay statement?
Thea, could you repeat that question?
Sure, I went a little fast and my head cold is making me a little dodgy. Does each team have its own unique essay statement? I'll answer that one. Yes, each team is required to submit an essay. They have 1,000 words to answer the stormwater management essay question, and then each team also has its own unique city narrative. Those are all judged prior to the students coming to the competition. Those are the virtual judging opportunities that Bill mentioned earlier. So there's 5 components, and folks that are doing in-person judging only have to judge the models and the presentation.
Okay, another question. Are there suggested questions or example questions that would be helping judging? Great question, yes. Again, on our website under resources, there are a list of sample questions that the students have been reviewing of the type of questions that will be asked. When you're at the regional or national final, we do have a list of mandatory questions that are asked of each team, but that doesn't mean you can't ask your own questions also within the time frame. We just have a couple of mandatory questions that we develop for the regional and national level to make sure that each team is asked at least one of the same questions on each team.
We have another question. Have the students seen the rubrics?
Yes. The rubric is in the manual, so the students are aware of the rubrics and have seen them.
And then we had some specific questions about time periods for the competition in various regions. So if you're unclear about what time you're supposed to show up in your specific region, please reach out to your regional coordinator or your judging coordinator and ask them what time and where you need to show up. And also, in addition, this webinar is a precursor to the trainings, the in-person trainings that you'll get the day that you arrive to judge the competition, either in Milwaukee or Arizona or wherever you are volunteering. Will any meals be provided to the 3D model judges? Bill?
Well, that depends on your region. If you are judging at national, yes, you will be, we provide a continental breakfast and a buffet lunch. Different regions, again, handle things differently. So if you're judging at a regional competition, again, I would contact that regional coordinator and find out what the plan is on that.
Yeah. And our final question is, how do I get a handbook?
Very easy. You can go to www.futurecity.org, scroll down to the bottom of the homepage and click on resources, and the handbook is one of the first things you'll see. It's a downloadable PDF. Well, I would like to thank all of our attendees for being with us on our webinar today and hope it's been useful to you. I'd like to particularly thank our presenters, Dr. Michael Smith and Charles Griffith, PE, for an excellent job in being with us and putting their presentations together. If you do have any questions about judging, you've got Charles' email there, but please feel free to contact me. Again, my name is Bill Knight, and I'm the National Program Manager. And you can reach me at bknight, B-K-N-I-G-H-T, at futurecity.org. Or if you click on our website, there is a link to info@futurecity.org, and that will also get to me. Thank everyone so